The Canucks played hard but struggled to score in a 3-1 loss to Vegas. Lots to talk about on this episode of Rink Wide Vancouver. And we welcome you inside the Rink Wide Vancouver studios in downtown Vancouver on a Saturday night. The Canucks start out of the Four Nations break with a 3-1 loss to the Vegas Golden Knights. Their 3-game win streak is a thing of the past. Second 3-1 loss to Vegas. Both of those games played at T-Mobile, so just 2 goals for the Vancouver Canucks in 2 games against the top team in the Pacific Division. Rink Wide is brought to you in part by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you open an account. The YouTube live chat is hopping, and certainly we encourage you to contribute throughout the program here. We will sample some of the wares as we work our way through this program tonight. We'll get to Farhan here in a second. But we want to tell you about our Super Chat charity partner, the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. Jeff Pettersson here in the Rink Wide studios, and boy, it must be a big game. We've got Farhan for the first time this season. No stranger to Rink Wide. We used him a bunch last year, but his football duties and travels are a thing of the past, at least for now. And so we bring in Farhan Lalji into the mix. Hey, Farhan, how are you?
I'm good. Irf must be away. Either that or you can't afford him, because I know Irf charges a pretty penny. I do this for free, almost.
Hey, he's been on assignment at the Invictus Games, but he'll be here after the Utah game on Sunday. But we've got you, and we're delighted that you've joined us here. Look, it's hard to knock the Canucks' effort. Don't have Quinn Hughes for a 5th straight game. Offense has been an issue really since Christmas for the Vancouver Canucks, and it was again in this hockey game. They opened the scoring. Not so much because Jake DeBrusk was the first one to put a puck in the net, but because Kevin Lankinen kept this game scoreless for the longest time, allowing the Canucks to open the scoring. Lankinen was terrific, no surprise there. But it is hard to win hockey games with just 1 goal, and that's the issue for the Vancouver Canucks. They beat the Leafs 2-1 before the break. They beat San Jose 2-1 before the break, so they can get it done with 2 goals, but 1 seems to be a little too steep, and certainly against a Vegas team. Again, I didn't have an issue with the effort, Farhan, but it is a bottom-line business, and they didn't win this hockey game.
Yeah, no doubt. And you make the point about Kevin Lankinen, who was outstanding, and he really needed to be early in this game, because in that first period, Tyler Myers, I don't know what he was doing with a pair of too many men penalties and then a delay of game. So if you actually looked at the first period from a 5-on-5 standpoint, or when it was at evens, the Canucks weren't that, caved in. But then with those 3 power plays, it certainly made life difficult for Lankinen. And these are tough ways to play games where you've got just no wiggle room at all, right? And so, look, he played fantastic. I'm sitting here making notes throughout the game, and it's Lankinen, great save here, Lankinen, great save there. And, to your point, right, like, I got to be honest, given how little they generated for 2+ periods, when Vegas got the 2-1 lead in the third, I really didn't think the Canucks were going to have anything, because they really hadn't had anything to that point. And then the disallowed goal with Bluger in the crease was a bit of, fortune for them to even get it to that point. And then after that, I was pretty impressed that they were able to still make a bit of a push and get some zone time. And some of that is score effects and Vegas sitting back and things of that nature. But the hardest part about it right now to watch, and look, we can't say it's been like this all the way through, because we're just coming off an Olympic break, but the hardest thing for me to watch right now, and it has been at other points this season, is there's just no skill. When Quinn Hughes is not in the lineup, there's just no skill. Like, they're not making those skilled plays. So to your point, the effort is there, but the skill required to make and to execute and to finish high-end chances just seems to be missing, especially with the other skilled player this team has, Elias Pettersson, nowhere to be found. How's this for you? End of the game, they get that power play at the end of the game, and Pettersson doesn't play in the power play at all. Doesn't come in until they need. Jake DeBrusk came in first, and then when they pulled the goalie, Pettersson got on. But at the most critical time, you couldn't play Elias Pettersson.
Yeah, I think some of that was circumstance. Now, certainly he didn't start the power play, and you talk about a high-leverage situation, but Besser and Hedl and Garland all stayed out for the duration of the 2 minutes. and I watched that too. But when they did get a change in, you're right. DeBrusk was the first guy over the boards, and
Well,
EP40.
and they had 45 or 50 seconds of 6-on-5 before that, and he wasn't out there.
Yeah. We'll get to him because we have to get to him.
Yeah.
But, like I hear you on score effects. I don't know that Vegas sat back a ton in that third period. I did think that the Canucks, of their periods, I mean, their shot totals went up as this game went along, just 5 in the first period. Now, they were shorthanded 3 times in the first, so not a huge surprise they got outshot and outplayed in the first period. But, shots in the second, I thought the ice sort of leveled out a little bit. Shots were 12-10 in the second for Vegas. Canucks outshoot Vegas 18-10 in that third period. So on the night, the final shots were 35-33. It didn't feel that close for a good chunk of this hockey game, but it was one shot away. I mean, in a 2-1 hockey game, you're one shot away. You talk about the Bluger opportunity, Dakota Joshua after the whistle on the power play, jamming the puck in as well. So the Canucks would say, hey, we put a couple of pucks in the net in the third period, but they didn't count. And really, I don't think they had a leg to stand on. Bluger topples over Adin Hill and is very much in the blue paint. Goalie has to have the blue paint. So I know the ref closest to the play called it a goal, but I think he got talked out of it pretty quickly by his other on-ice officials. And then the other one, Joshua, was clearly after the whistle. So,
but Jeff, for all the action and for all the zone time, and maybe it wasn't score effects, and maybe it wasn't Vegas sitting back, but through all of that, in terms of actual scoring chances, still 10-7 for Vegas in the third, 5-3 high dangers in the third. Yep. You need skill to finish those plays, to get you into that position, and that's kind of where they're lacking right now. Still a lot of perimeter play and scrambles, but just not a lot of direct shots on goal from high leverage situations.
And so, in saying that, you can't make the play that they did in the first minute of the third period and give up such an easy goal to the Vegas Golden Knights. And look, Connor Garland hustles. The guy, his motor's almost always going, but when it's not, you got to point to him. And yes, it's a fortunate bounce off the lively end boards that comes right out into the slot to Brandon Saad, but I mean, how many times do we hear Rick Tocchet screaming about move your feet? Usually it's to Elias Pettersson, but a complete lack of back check by Connor Garland, and Saad is his guy. And as we show the replay here on the live stream, like Connor Garland doesn't take a stride inside the blue line. And again, in a 1-1 game at that point, like every inch of ice matters. And Connor Garland, quite frankly, had to do a better job in that moment.
And it's the first minute of the third period. So you can't say he got caught out there 2 minutes deep into a shift, or it's been a fatigue point in the game. It wasn't. So, and you're right. Look, we can't sit here and throw Connor Garland under the bus because he has been so consistent for this team all season long in terms of his effort level, if nothing else. But those are the margins this team is playing with, right? And what Kevin Lankinen is playing with. And you get one bad bounce off the end boards and a player comes in clean. And he certainly, Lankinen certainly did his part, and we'll get into the contract and the future and all of that. But in his first game back, he absolutely made a statement. And now Rick Tocchet's got to decide, because you need to win. Like you didn't get a point here. There was no OTL here. You need to win tomorrow. And this guy just made 35 saves, and I've got to look at the attempts, but there were a few others that just missed the net that he had to stretch and make huge efforts for, even if they didn't count as shots on goal.
Well, Rick Tocchet said after the morning skate this morning that a decision on Sunday would be made after this game based on the workload. After 20 minutes of play, when Lankinen stopped all 13 shots he faced, but the bulk of them coming on the power play, he was sensational, and I thought, this is going to be a 40-plus save night for him. Yeah. Again, the Canucks were able to level the playing field a little bit, but at the end of the night, it's 35 saves. He was under duress at times, made the terrific save off Howden on the breakaway when it was 2-1 in the third period there. That came after that sequence where, and we see this almost every game now, it feels like somebody's losing a skate play. This time it was Braden McNabb, and you're dead man walking. And I thought the Canucks should have been able to take more of an advantage there and try and isolate him, and they couldn't. And ultimately it was the Golden Knights that went the other way. They had the breakaway, but Kevin Lankinen stands his ground. He makes that save. Then there was the other sequence a little bit later on where Adin Hill was without his stick and the Canucks were zipping it around. But I'm with you. We can sort of isolate moments in that third period, but show me the grade A opportunities. And really it felt like if it wasn't Philip Hedl and his line, there wasn't a whole lot happening for the rest of the Vancouver Canuck forwards in this hockey game.
Well, and there were moments in that sequence where Carson Soucy's walking over to a pass. He's going to be in perfect position to take a shot. Tyler Myers and Hronek, we saw it at different points in the game, and the pass is a foot too far to the right, so they can't just tee it up. They've got to adjust. I remember years ago hearing a story from Steve Nash, and he used to talk to me about how, there were certain times in games where they needed to reverse the ball, and he didn't want the guy at the top shooting. So he'd put the ball in a spot where that guy couldn't shoot and he had to move it. And it felt like I was watching that somebody intentionally was putting a pass into a spot where the guy couldn't shoot the puck. And, we talk about skilled plays. Like, you need to tee that up. Those are uncontested passes. Put it on the tape. Don't put it in the skates. And, it just, and it's so hard for this team to get those looks. That when a player is in position to get that look, you got to make the pass and you got to put it in the spot where he can finish.
With the loss, the Vancouver Canucks fall to 26, 19, and 11 on the season, so they remain on 61 points. Calgary didn't play tonight. Utah, their opponent tomorrow, lost in regulation in Los Angeles, so no blood in terms of the playoff positioning for the Vancouver Canucks. They remain above the playoff bar with a little bit of a cushion here, and this was always going to be difficult. Although we saw around the National Hockey League, first game back out of this break, there were some weird scores, there were some high scores. You didn't really know what to expect, and I kind of thought, hey, maybe this is an opportunity to sneak into Vegas before, they get their game back. They're without Shea Theodore, and maybe you can sneak something out. And again, for 40 minutes, they were in pretty good position, but in the end, Vegas scores the only 2 goals of the third. Brandon Saad gets the winner just 18 seconds in, and then Thomas Hertl with the empty netter, his 22nd of the year. So the Canucks 15, 9, and 4 on the road, and 2 of those road losses, regulation setbacks at T-Mobile. And as I said right off the top, both of them have been 3-1 losses. Teddy Bluger scored the only goal in there just before Christmas, and in this one, it was Jake DeBrusk with his team-leading 20th. So 300th NHL point as well. So a couple of nice round numbers for Jake DeBrusk. But, as you start to size up the Canucks with 26 games to go and they are above the playoff bar, this is the kind of team that they're going to run into in the first round if they remain the second wild card. And so the lack of offense, the struggles of some of the stars, you hope Quinn Hughes is healthy. But Farhan, 2 games against Vegas, 1 goal in each of those. They scored 1 goal in Winnipeg at the end of that road trip in January. Came home, they scored 1 goal against the Los Angeles Kings. It's a tough way to play. It's a tough way to make a living against some of these top teams above them in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the game, they were ranked 23rd in the league in terms of goals per game at 2.80. And, you mentioned that, in terms of 5-on-5 goals total in regulation in these 8 games where they were 3-1, they're averaging just 2 per game and then couldn't get to that amount tonight, right? So it's difficult without Quinn Hughes. But one of the things that Rick Tocchet has pointed to, and, hearing him on the pregame and, going into the break was, I like our process. I like how we're defending, but 31 scoring chances allowed tonight and 14 high dangers allowed tonight. They might have taken a slight step back in that regard in the first game coming out of the break. So they've got a ways to go to tighten that up. And certainly when Quinn Hughes gets back in the lineup, that helps because they play with the puck a little bit more. That was another problem in the first period, right? Like, you lose 14 of 17 faceoffs and you don't have the puck, right? Yeah. So it puts you in a real difficult defensive situation. So that part of their game needs to find itself fairly quickly. And I think it will. I do think they're committed to it, but it didn't look the way it had looked in those previous 4 games tonight.
The funny part there is, and
look,
like
the opponent's real good, right? I mean, Vegas is better than what they played.
No, and look, Vegas, they're well coached. We know that, and just positionally sound, deep. They're balanced, and they're going to get better when they get Shea Theodore back and without William Karlsson, and they've probably got something up their sleeve because they always seem to, whether it's long-term injury or trade deadline. I'm not convinced that this is their lineup moving forward, but it's funny because you mentioned Vegas won 14 of 17 faceoffs in the first period, like absolute domination. The rest of the way, the Canucks won 25 and lost 14. It was a saw-off. At the end of the night, the faceoffs were 28 apiece. So I don't know if it was adjustments by the Vancouver Canucks or guys just finding their groove after a couple of weeks off. Whatever the case, Canucks actually schooled Vegas over the final 40 minutes, but at the end of the night, 28 wins, 28 losses apiece. Let's get to the 3 stars of the hockey game. 3 stars as selected in the building. A clean sweep for the Vegas Golden Knights. No love for Kevin Lankinen, Brandon Saad, Aiden Hill, Ivan Barbashev. So a goal scorer and, 2 goal scorers and the goaltender. The 3 stars. I think you got to give Lankinen a star. We're certainly going to here on Rink Wide. It's one of those nights where, to me, it was the 2 goaltenders, and then kind of like Connor McDavid the other night. I'm not sure that Brandon Saad deserved a star, but he gets the game winner, so it wasn't as dramatic as McDavid. Wasn't overtime, but we'll throw Brandon Saad in there as well. Aiden Hill, really good in the third period, as we said. Stopped all 18 shots he faced, 34 on the night. Lankinen, the Canucks don't have a chance in this hockey game if he doesn't do his thing. First minute of the hockey game, Pavel Dorofeyev had 2 glorious opportunities. Like, talk about testing your goaltender early, and the Vancouver Canucks hung him out to dry at times, but he's calm, he's cool, collected in there. We know that. We've seen that all season long, and so another solid performance from Kevin Lankinen. He's got the 2nd star here on Rink Wide. Brandon Saad, as we said, with the winner is the 3rd star. 3 stars for a presentation of Greta Bar YVR. We were there the other night for the championship game of Four Nations. Place was hopping. It was a ton of fun. We always talk about all the big screens. It really is a great place to watch a game, any sporting event. If you haven't, get down there, check it all out. I had the smash burger because everybody's been talking about the street food menu, so I had to check it out myself. Came as advertised. The arcade games during the intermissions, a ton of fun. They got the weekly drink specials as well. Greta Bar, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. Let's just touch on Jake DeBrusk, because I had a good chat with him the other day after one of the practices here before they left for Vegas, and I just said, 19 goals at this stage of the season. You lead the Canucks. You got the contract as a free agent. I think people sort of had this expectation, 25 as a bare minimum, and maybe take a run at 30 if he gets power play time. And I asked him, was he content with his season so far? And he said, not necessarily. And then he got into reasons why, and he wants to be more productive 5-on-5. Said that, usually that's been his bread and butter, but this year he's found a way to score on the power play, but wants to do a little bit more 5-on-5. He did score at 5-on-5, open the scoring, 6:22 into the second period. Some good work by Kiefer Sherwood. Carson Soucy gets the second assist there and finds Jake DeBrusk in the back door, and made no mistake, looking like a goal scorer. So he's at 20 with 26 games to go. A career high of 27. I think if he stays healthy, he absolutely should be able to better his career high. And there's no reason that he can't take a run at 30 for the season. As we said, somebody's got to score some goals for this team, Farhan. Does Jake DeBrusk get to 30 when all is said and done?
I think he's going to come up just short. And look, think of how late he got started, right? In terms of, what was his first goal, like 12 games in or something like that? It took him a while to get it going. And then all of his first, 10 goals or something like that were on the road. So, and since then, I think he's been a little bit more consistent. I think that's, as much as anything else, what he's looking for. You don't want to be one of these streaky scorers. And that had always been his MO. We talk about it with Brock Besser, that when he's healthy, he's a 30-goal pace player, but he's also kind of done it in spurts, right? And that's the challenge for these guys. And when you get paid that much, you're expected to, if not score, at least be a threat, right? Other people are scoring based off what you create, off scoring chances. So I think he's been better. He's been a pleasant add for what they're paying him. I think he's probably, you're right. I think 27 is reasonable. 30 is not far away, but my guess is he'll probably just come up short.
Well, if he doesn't score goals on the regular, I'm not sure who's going to for the Vancouver Canucks. As we said, he's the first guy to 20 this year. It is remarkable when you look, and Mike Rogerson, our producer, and I were in during the game watching it here in studio. You look at the point totals for the Canuck forwards. Out of this Four Nations break, there's 26 games to go, and their leading forward has 35 points on the season. It's without Quinn Hughes, and who knows where he is in terms of his recovery and game readiness. I think he was hoping that he was going to play tonight, but clearly with all the drama this week about the Four Nations, not medically cleared. And so now I guess the question is, and we'll see if we hear from Tocchet post-game, but of these 2 games this weekend, in the big picture, the game in Utah is far more important to the Vancouver Canucks than this one. They're not catching Vegas, but Utah could reel them in, and they've got 2 left against Utah head-to-head. I do wonder if the prudent play, Quinn Hughes was on the ice yesterday, was on the ice again this morning briefly. I wonder if this was sort of being patient and trying to be smart in all of this, I do wonder if they're holding him to make his return to the lineup tomorrow in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. And I got to be honest, J-Pat, you were there asking the questions the first day that he skated when he was wearing the red jersey. And it certainly sounded like in his mind, he was healthy and ready to play. And if he felt he could have gone and played in Boston in that championship game, I was pretty cynical and kind of side-eyed the thought that he hadn't been medically cleared. And I guess I was wrong, but I thought that, the team didn't want him to necessarily travel and waste a trip, right? To me, once he was on the ice skating in Vancouver on the Wednesday, he was never going to play in that championship game because that's generally not how you do it when you're traveling east, right? Where, he would have got in at 10, 11 at night and then you try to play him the next game. So I knew that wasn't going to happen, but I still thought he was going to play this weekend. But it wouldn't be the smart thing given the nature of injury to try to get him to go back to back right out of the gate. So why not give him the extra day at the front end, have him play in the more valuable game? Honestly, I thought they might do that with Lankinen and let Silovs play. But it worked out well on the goaltending front. When you look at Lankinen, the fact that he played in the tournament probably timed out perfect for him. Didn't have to play in the final, had about 5 days clear from his last game, which he got the hook in to come in and play in this game. Whereas, maybe if he has a 3-week break, he's not as sharp tonight. Thought it worked out perfect. Now, in the case of Quinn Hughes, it would make sense for them to let him play tomorrow. But, when you pointed out that just 3 practices in 20 days, that is a tough ask. It feels like with that kind of injury, you're setting yourself up for the next one. But, hopefully for the Canucks, he plays tomorrow because they're an entirely different team when he is.
Well, Rick Tocchet postgame tonight. This is our buddy Thomas Drance from The Athletics. He's quoting Rick Tocchet saying, "We've got to play long ball here," when asked about Lankinen's workload and the notion of starting him again in Utah. Obviously not confirmed, but Drance says the implication is that Silovs is going to start against the hockey club in Salt Lake City. And again, they've got back-to-backs on Wednesday and Thursday in Los Angeles and in Anaheim. Silovs is going to play on this road trip. I mean, Lankinen he simply can't play them all. But again, getting nothing out of this game when they were 20 minutes away, less than 20 minutes away, that's got to be disappointing. It's got to be frustrating for them, and it does put some importance on getting a result of some kind out of Utah on Sunday night. Utah is 6 back of the Vancouver Canucks, so there's still some distance there. But as we said, they've got 2 games head-to-head remaining, and we'll see what happens ultimately. So some stakes of significance on Sunday against the hockey club. 5th straight game for without Quinn Hughes, 9 now on the season, all of them since Christmas. So, it's a career high for him. Unfortunately, you can tell that he's frustrated. He wants to be in there, and they're so much better and so much more entertaining when Quinn Hughes is playing. That said, I do want to give Filip Hronek some props here. I do think he's elevated his play. I don't know that this was the best of the games that he's played without Quinn Hughes, but plays 27 minutes and 32 seconds, 10 and a half minutes, 10:37 of the third period alone.
Wow.
You look at, shooting the puck a ton, 5 shots on goal, 9 attempts, had 4 blocked shots. He's on the ice for a couple of the goals, including the empty netter. We're not going to hold that against him. But I do think that, we've wondered about what he makes and, is he more than Quinn Hughes' caddy? Can he hold his own? I think we have seen Filip Hronek elevate his play here over the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Paging Alan Walsh. We know how close the two of you are. And you're right. He's got a complete game, right? And he can shoot the puck, he can skate with the puck, he can defend, he can kill penalties. Heavy penalty kill in that first period when Myers took the 3 penalties. So I know 2 aren't tagged to him, but they were essentially. But when you looked at what he did in the game, you're right. He has elevated his play. He's elevated his minutes. He's playing a physical style. He's had his share of injury, bad luck along the way here. But when he's healthy, he is absolutely a very, very solid number 2 defenseman in this group.
And the underlying numbers were good as well. Individual Corsi, 55%. The shots at 5-on-5 favored the Canucks 13-9. So, this wasn't a case of Lankinen bailing him out, that they spent more of his shifts in the offensive zone. He and Derek Forbert for the first couple of periods. And then, interesting, as they're down and they're pushing, DPD got a bit of a promotion there. And, another night where this kid just doesn't look out of place. And add a game in Vegas to this resume that he made his debut against the Washington Capitals when they were the top team in the National Hockey League. He's played against Colorado. He was good against the Toronto Maple Leafs in the game before the break, and here coming out of the break in Vegas, holding his own. Like, this is really promising for him. Now, when Quinn Hughes gets back, the Canucks are going to have a decision to make. Is it the rookie that comes out? Adam Foote had some high praise when I asked him about Derek Forbert. I mean, nobody talks about Forbert, but, if Derek Forbert is your third pairing guy, where he probably should be, kills penalties, just kind of quietly goes about his business, solid veteran, I do wonder if they defer to him and, he gets the first looks. Like, DPD just being up with the NHL team, practicing with this group, experiencing all of this. Like, for his development, this is all in credit. He's so far ahead of the curve as a just turned 21-year-old who's in the National Hockey League now. I've been impressed with just about everything I've seen, but I do wonder when they get Quinn Hughes back. They've got Marcus Pettersson. Hughes and Marcus Pettersson haven't played together yet because Hughes went out right after the Canucks made the trade. And so you'd have Hughes obviously logging a bunch on the left side. Marcus Pettersson's going to get his minutes as well. And then it's a question of, do you go with sort of the wisdom of the old veteran, or does youth prevail here, and does DPD somehow stay in the lineup?
Yeah, I'm a DPD guy, and I say that because I want guys that can move the puck and I want guys that can skate. Now, look, Forbert can kill penalties. He can block shots. I think he had over 4 minutes of penalty-killing ice time in the first period alone.
Yeah.
They lean on him, played 17 and a half minutes. That generally the Canucks aren't in a good place when he plays 17 and a half minutes, much like when Vinny Desharnais did before the trade, right? And like, you don't want to be in that world with limited players in terms of their mobility, but he has gotten better. There's no doubt about it. And as long as they can keep him in that third pair role, I think they'll be okay. But for me, I wouldn't send DPD down. I would let him play, and you could select your opponents and try to give him each half the time. But you're right. This is all bonus for him. But he can skate and he can move the puck. I didn't like the play that happened at the offensive blue line where he couldn't make the play there. And then all of a sudden, Howden goes the other way for a breakaway that was in front of him. But again, I mean, those moments are few and far between because he doesn't look out of place. He doesn't look overwhelmed. He looks really, really comfortable. So this is found money for them right now when you consider where he was drafted and where this blue line was at the beginning of the season. DPD was in the lineup before they got Marcus Pettersson. And that was one of the positives in terms of how this entire group was coming together. Then they add Pettersson to that. When Quinn Hughes comes back, don't take the skating away. Let this guy stay in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, except that when Quinn Hughes comes back, there's 25 minutes. Marcus Pettersson's going to get probably 20 himself, and you are looking at third pairing minutes. And I'm not suggesting
he could thrive at 10 minutes a game.
I'm not suggesting for a second send him back. I do wonder. And also with like back-to-backs, I'm not sure that Derek Forbert needs to be in the lineup in consecutive games, and there might be some opportunities to rest him up and sit him down. So we'll see. They're not at that point yet, but it is going to get to a juncture where they do have to make a decision, but they're not in that moment just yet. All right, we got a super chat, so I want to make note of that. Casey Shuffle, a regular contributor here to Rink Wide. How does Vancouver go from 2 elite centers to none?
Mm-hmm.
And really, you can back it up. And I mean, it wasn't that long ago, 2 years ago, they had arguably the deepest run down the middle with 3 centers that could all get the job done when Bo Horvat was still here, and JT Miller, and of course, Elias Pettersson. And yeah, I mean, let's get into EP40's night here. The numbers: plays 15 minutes and 59 seconds, so under 16 minutes of ice time, 13 and a half of that at 5-on-5. Just 1 shot on goal on 3 attempts. Was all right in the face-off circle on a night where it looked like they were all going to struggle. But, it's just such a simple question. Did you notice them?
Nope.
And at the end of the night, you're right. It's a pretty simple answer.
Well, and now you got to hang the injury conversation on top of it, right? Because, he gets benched for the last 15 minutes of that Sweden their third game. So now we have to look at the fact that, okay, maybe he was hurt, and that's why he didn't play those last 15 minutes. Questionable coming into this game. I don't know, man. Like, they got to make a decision here. And I don't mean a big picture decision, but if he's hurt, he's giving you nothing. Like, absolutely nothing. And I'm sure his defensive game is fine, but they need a little more from him right now. All of a sudden, if you had talked to us 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we would have said this team needs to fix its defense at the trade deadline. Now they need a center. That is priority number one. Like they need a top six center, short term and long term, because Hedl is probably better served in a third line capacity. And I don't know that Petey's going to become a number one anytime soon. So like you don't go out and get number one centers at the trade deadline, but if you can get a legitimate two that might be an upgrade here, like Elias Lindholm this year, oh my goodness, like a player like that would be elevated to 1C immediately. And you mentioned three centers. Let's take this one step further. 2 years ago, the core of this team was Pettersson, Hughes, Miller, not Hronek, Horvat, Besser, and Demco. Where are we with all of those guys? Right?
Well,
Besser could get traded. Demco
Hughes may be the only. By the end of the summer, Hughes may be the only one of that group that's still here.
Yeah. And we're all holding our breath that he's here more than 2 years. Right? Like think about the math there, that this entire core could completely get turned over. And I know the question is specifically about the center, but I was thinking about that earlier today, that how did we get here 2 years later?
And look, I thought he had moments again in this hockey game. He had the 2-on-1 with Drew O'Connor in the second period that it looked easy because they broke the puck out with speed. He was set up in the slot by Forbert in the third period, had a really good look directly out in front of the net. I noticed Hedl again, but I think some of that is relative to what is around him, that if you have a couple of chances, all of a sudden you look like the most dangerous guy on the Vancouver Canucks. So,
he had a partial 2-on-1 with Besser, but Besser couldn't get free. Right. So Hedl had no other choice but to shoot the puck from the right side of the ice there, and so you're right. To your point, he looks fast on a slow team.
He had 6 shots on goal. Hedl did. And you like that. Like, that's good. That means he's got the puck in shooting positions and he's not afraid to shoot the puck. I remember the play you were talking about in the first period there where you're right. And look, Besser even joked about it earlier in the week when I asked him about playing with these two guys that scoot around the ice at a pretty good rate. And he said, like, I know, I got to keep up. And it's fine. He's right. Can he do it, I guess, is the question. But, what are the other options? That's the problem here is, in small doses, I have no issues with Kiefer Sherwood being moved up to sort of provide a little burst. But Kiefer Sherwood on a good team shouldn't be in the top 6. And yet there he is playing alongside Elias Pettersson and Jake DeBrusk. And just back to Petey for a sec. We talked about the 2 chances that Pavel Dorofeyev had in the opening minute. He had the slap shot from the high slot, and then the puck moved to the side boards. And, Thomas Hertl, he didn't even have to lift a finger, essentially, to not... it looked like Petey tried to do the reverse hit, and Hertl was having none of it. Just picked his pocket, took his lunch money, and sets up Dorofeyev for a great scoring chance coming out of the corner. And so, we're back to this, if he's not producing offense, people are still trying to find the silver linings of his defensive game, but, man, he didn't look very good there. And now... if he's ailing and his knee is in fact bothering him, it's back-to-back this weekend and then a couple days off and then 2 more back-to-backs. How effective do we think he can be going back-to-back if he's got one bad wheel?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that, first of all, do we know it's a knee? Or are we assuming that it's the knee again?
It's an assumption.
I mean, I don't even recall them having said lower body yet. But, when you look at it, I don't know how much of it is the knee right now as an injury, or how much of it is the knee having prevented his offseason from becoming a functional player when he showed up at camp, and now he's playing catch up this entire time. So as much as part of me started saying earlier with the previous question, time to sit him, how long are you going to sit him for? And what difference is it going to make? He's probably at the point now where he does need an entire offseason if he's going to find his game. It didn't work last offseason. And what state is he going to enter the offseason in? Will he be able to at any point, or is it just going to be an entire offseason of rest?
Right. I think that's the big question here is there any way? It's not about flipping a switch. We're way past that. If it could have been done, it would have been done. 26 games to go. And then, again, if they make the playoffs, what does he have to offer in the playoffs? We know last year he was invisible come playoff time. So... this isn't going away. The heat is certainly not going to be off him, nor should it be, given what he's making. But you just wonder, can there be realistic expectations that he is somehow going to look markedly different? And I'm with you. Like, okay, if you sit him down, would you miss him that much? But Archie Baines is the only other healthy forward on this road trip.
No, but if they go get another center, if they go get a legitimate top six center at the deadline, because they need one more than just this year, right? Like preferably they get one with term. And if that guy's available and they go get him, like I don't know that it hurts you to sit him down and begin his offseason sooner. Like I hate to say that, but this team has made mistakes on some of those decisions before, starting with a guy like Ilya Mikheyev, right? When we looked at that and how much better served would he have been to have had the surgery earlier and all those types of things. So, like, if you sit him down for his own benefit, you know, I'm sure the owner wouldn't be happy when you're going into the playoffs, but if you spend X amount of time with him resting so that he can actually get into an offseason and have an offseason of rehabilitation and strengthening, because if he's got it's a 3-month offseason and he's got to spend the first 2 months of that just resting, what are you going to get out of him when he shows up again? Right? Like it feels to me like this is, and look, I'm not a doctor and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express, but what we are seeing here is just not good enough. And if they're making the decision to keep him, they have to do everything possible to put him in a position to be the best version of himself. And that might require some short-term pain.
10 games without a goal, by the way, for Elias Pettersson. 1 in his last 16 hockey games now. He scored against the Buffalo Sabres way back when. At least the stats tell me that. I don't recall it off the top of my head, but I'm sure it happened. 1 goal in his last 16 games. 5 games to go now until that March 7th NHL trade deadline. The Canucks are at home to Minnesota later that night, but that game doesn't count. There's 5 between now and the trade deadline. So we'll see what happens here over the next, it's inside of 2 weeks now. Countdown's on to the NHL trade deadline. The Daily Faceoff trade deadline special comes your way on March the 7th, 8 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Pacific. And the DFO live team is going to be on top of all the breaking news that happens that day, breaking down every single move, instant reaction, expert analysis, all the behind-the-scenes drama of the biggest day of deals, checking in on the hottest markets around the league. Tune in to Daily Faceoff's YouTube channel and follow Daily Faceoff on socials in the days leading into the deadline and, of course, on deadline day, March the 7th. All right, we quoted Rick Tocchet. I want to hear from Rick Tocchet in his own words. We've got the Canucks coach post-game after a 3-1 loss in Vegas, so let's roll the head coach out of Sin City.
Into the game, but your thoughts on the team effort from this one?
Well, there's some good, bad. I think there's moments that we should have executed on. Had a couple goals there. You know, wish they were taken back, but you know, it's the right calls. Thought it was a quick whistle on the other one, but overall the execution was good some parts and sometimes it wasn't. I thought we had them when they had 6-on-5. They were tired and we didn't make some smart plays, shot the puck over the net. We hurried some of our shots, so I don't know if that's rust over the 2 weeks, but I think for the most part it was a 1-1 game. We gave them that freebie to start the game, and then obviously the first period, can't give them 3 penalties, too many men. That hurts you the first, guys are, it's 2 weeks off, guys are tired a little bit, but just there's moments there we didn't come through.
Like you said, 3 frustrating penalties, but to kill off all 3 of those against a team that has one of the strongest power plays, what does that say? Yeah,
they got a great part. No, that's great. That's a positive for us, but it takes our bench out. It just, so that whole first period you're scrambling because, you're killing 3 penalties.
So what did you do in the third, the final 15 minutes that was better?
Well, I just thought we played, I don't know if it was nervous. We were chipping pucks in when nobody was on us. You got to grab a puck and make a play. We started to do that in the third. Still think we could have some more net front. There was some rebounds there laying there we just didn't get to. But, make a play, grab a puck. We're content on just chipping pucks. And I don't know if we're nervous or not or rust, but we got to make sure that we grab some of those pucks.
Sorry. Yeah. There you go. Well, all these games obviously are important from here on in, but this is a team that's ahead of you in the standings. You get a little closer in the rear view if you win tonight. Yeah. The game that Lankinen had, the fact it was 1-0 then 1-1, did it feel like a missed opportunity?
Yeah, Lanks was great tonight, and the game is about moments, and we had some moments there that we didn't capitalize, and we need some guys to capitalize on it for us.
With this game in general, there was maybe a 15, 20-minute stretch sort of right after DeBrusk scores where it seemed like they were able to get to their game and kind of take it over. Was there something specific that sort of you saw that allowed that?
Well, somebody would have a puck and we'd ice a puck. Like, we weren't skating with it. It was almost like, I don't know if we're nervous or nobody was supporting the puck. So when you're playing under pressure, you got to be able to make plays under pressure, and that you might have to skate 5 feet, pass a puck to a guy, than just deferring to throw the puck away. So I think you're right. About 15 minutes there, we were just tossing pucks away. It was frustrating. Like I said, I don't know if it's 2 weeks off or the rust, but you got to make plays under pressure.
Pretty busy night for Kevin, not just the sort of raw shot totals, but just the amount of traffic they had, the amount of deflections, the amount of shot attempts. How do you look at tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll take a look, but I'm not a big fan of playing a guy when he had a big workload tonight. So we got to play long ball on this one.
There you go. We had that quote earlier, but we'll finish it with there. That certainly sounds like it's going to be an arty party in Utah on Sunday night. But as is usually the case, I think Rick's got his finger on the pulse most of the times. One of the first answers there where he talked about 6-on-5 and worked it around, but as we said, didn't do anything with it. Got to make the most of those opportunities, especially in a one-goal hockey game.
Yeah. Now, did he mention anything about Quinn Hughes for tomorrow? Did that question come up?
No, at least not in that. And we should credit the Canucks, by the way, for the post-game audio. But that wasn't included in that video package, so I don't know if he was asked about Hughes.
And he talks so much about make a play. Like, make a play. We've got to make a play. And I said off the top, I'm not convinced they necessarily have the guys to make plays on a regular basis. I just don't think this is an overly skilled team. I don't think they play with a ton of confidence in the offensive end. And, I think for them, they probably want to take the simpler approach and dump the puck in the corner and try to, get traffic, get shots as opposed to beating somebody, right? And we're seeing that from potentially all their top players as well right now, not named Quinn Hughes. So it becomes difficult the way he wants them to play. I'm not sure that the majority of them are equipped to play that way.
Yeah. I looked at this night the way it went. Like, Pia Suter had that one opportunity on the rebound in the third period.
After Dakota Joshua.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't really get a good look at a replay there. I don't know how he missed. But I didn't think it was much of a night for Pia Suter. And, you can go down the list. I mean, in a game where they score one goal, like, there were not a lot of guys. But, Pia Suter had a nice start to the season. He's been pretty quiet really since Christmas. But he's not alone. Like, even Connor Garland, we harped on Connor Garland on the back check. Connor Garland's got 1 point in his last 7 games. He scored a goal in Dallas the night that they traded JT Miller. But 1 point in 7 games, and he's getting power play time. He's out there on the first unit power play. They need first half Connor Garland back because, again, the motor's usually running, but in the first half it came with production. The production's gone awfully quiet. We know it's been a struggle for Dakota Joshua to launch all season long. Teddy Bluger, I mean, it would have been nice to see him get a goal just because he hasn't scored since the last time they were in Vegas. But, again, we go basically down the list here. To your point, who are you expecting to put the puck in the net if Elias Pettersson's not at that top of the list? And it kind of feels like he's no longer at the top of anybody's list for expectations to produce offense.
Well, and then some of the other guys that did it for them last year, and you mentioned a couple of them. Like, I noticed Nils Höglander a lot on the puck earlier in this game, but the closest they got was when he threw it off Teddy Bluger's knee or whatever it was, and it turns into a no goal. Like, you need some bottom line for a guy that had 20 goals all at 5-on-5 last year. You look at Dakota Joshua. Irf and I battled about him all last year. I was happy they gave him the money they did because the way he played, he showed skill and hands and finish for a big man last year. Like, that skill that this organization so craves, I thought he had and was ready to launch. And look, unfortunate what he had to go through. I can't minimize that. But certainly now that they're in the final third of the season, and we saw a couple of glimpses, and this is what we're hanging on, we saw a couple of glimpses right before the Four Nations break. And I thought, okay, if he can take that and, a little more rest and strength and recovery and really turn it on in the back end and the play before the Suter play, right? He had it right in the prime area and had 2 touches on it and couldn't finish it, right? Those are the plays. He's got some skill. We saw it a year ago. They need that skill back from a number of these guys. So, we saw it from Connor Garland, to your point, earlier in the season, right? And, Drancer always used to be the Connor Garland truther because of how productive he was at 5-on-5, but just won in the last 7. They need more from some of these role players. Now, it's easier for role players to be role players when the top of the lineup is producing, but when the role players become the focus of what the opponents are looking at, it becomes that much harder for those role players to be those guys. So, but they need some guys to chip in because there is no front of the lineup. There is none, right? Hughes is hurt. Pettersson's not the same guy. It's where they're at.
Gets thin in a hurry. Höglander and Joshua, by the way, combined for 42 goals last year, and they've got 5 between them, or 6 maybe, is it now? So, like, those guys were counted. They were still secondary producers, but they were, regular contributors, and now, it's they would take anything from anybody lower in the lineup, and again, it's going to be difficult as they move here. Hockey Night had the stat. I think this is 16 of the last 17 games the Canucks have been held to 3 or fewer goals. They scored 5 in a 5-2 win in St. Louis, but otherwise, 16 of the last 17, it's 3 or fewer, and most of those nights, 3 has felt like a bushel full. There haven't been a lot of 3-goal nights in that collection. It's a lot of 1s and a lot of 2s. That leads us to our stat that stands out. And the stat that stands out tonight is the Vegas Golden Knights' record within the Pacific Division is 15-2-1. How do you get to the top of your division? Well, you beat up all the teams that you're battling with, and Vegas has done an incredible job of that. 2 of the wins against the Vancouver Canucks. They've still got 2 to go, both here in Vancouver, in the final 10 days of the regular season. Weird scheduling. Vegas is here on April 6th, and then again on April 16th, which is Game 82 for both of those teams. So it'll be a while before the Golden Knights come to town, but they will make 2 trips here to Vancouver. But look at that record within the division, 15-2-1. That is definitely a stat that stands out. And with the win, we should mention Edmonton lost earlier in the day in Philadelphia, so Vegas is now 2 points clear of Edmonton atop the Pacific Division. So, again, as the Canucks hold their own above the playoff bar, I do think, officially out of this Four Nations tournament, now we're into the stretch run. There's still 26 to go, but I do think you start to frame it that if the Canucks stay above the bar, these are the types of opponents that they're going to face, and and they'd start on the road, too. That's the other thing. Keep in mind that if they're the wild card team in the lower seed, they're going to start on the road. And so, what a difference a year makes. Last year was fun. They started at home in the playoffs. They had home ice advantage. It didn't ultimately mean enough in Game 7 against the Oilers. But this year, if the Canucks do make the playoffs, seems pretty likely that they would have to head out on the road to get things going.
Well, if they're going to want to win a playoff series, they're going to have to goalie an opponent. Like, that's really what it comes down to with this roster. You're going to have a goalie steal it for you. So my question to you is, Jeff, which goalie gets that opportunity to steal a series in the first round?
Well, right now, Kevin Lankinen, because the other guy's not healthy. And I guess I've kind of lost my confidence that he is reliable enough to count on, to be there.
Well, you have to think the organization has too, right? Like, 5 times 4.5, that's a real eyebrow raiser. And again, I'm not telling you he doesn't deserve it. I thought it was potentially, I felt like I did when they signed Thatcher Demko to his first contract, when Jim Benning did. His sample size was so small, and they really bought high. Now, very quickly, he proved he was going to be that guy, and the contract became a value deal like by year 2, literally. Mm-hmm. But so, and maybe that'll happen with Kevin Lankinen again. This guy's never shown he can be a full-time NHL goalie. Now, when you pay him 4.5, you do allow yourself the luxury to go out and get another goaltender that you can pay a legitimate amount to get you through a third of the season, right? But Thatcher Demko is not settling for that. Like, at some point, Thatcher Demko is going to get healthy. I have no idea whether or not he'll ever stay healthy, but my sense is he's probably going to get to a point where some team will still see value there and want to pay him. So has the organization made a decision, if not short-term, then long-term, that that's our goalie and we're going to move on from Demko once we're in a position to do so?
It feels to me like, yes, they have. I don't think anybody's going to come out and say it. But, look, I have no doubt that Thatcher Demko will play for the Vancouver Canucks again.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Like, it's just to a point, it's not about him getting healthy anymore. It's about him staying healthy. And we don't even know what this latest one is. Like, is it another back spasms issue, or is this a separate injury altogether? All we know is it's not the knee. We were told repeatedly it's not the knee. And we were also told, he'll be evaluated after this road trip. But that's 5 more games, or at least 4 now that this one's over. Like, it doesn't mean that he's going to be healthy and ready to play again at the end of this road trip. It's just he's going to be reevaluated, and we'll see when he rejoins the team for practice and ultimately when he's ready to be an option. In the meantime, as we said, Kevin Lankinen can't play them all. Sounds like Silovs is going to go. Archer Silovs hasn't played a game since that night in Pittsburgh in late November when he got absolutely lit up. He's been playing better down in Abbotsford, but that's the AHL. This is the NHL, and there's some heat on him now, Farhan. Like,
But Lankinen came in
the-
here as number 3, right? Like, Lankinen was number 3 behind Silovs to start the season. That was the goaltending depth chart. So they need him to get back to a point. And I mean, look, the fact that they have done this with Lankinen, and if they have, as you and I think they have, made a long-term decision with Thatcher Demco, there's now a new opportunity for Archer Silovs, because they didn't find a way. Like, imagine if this deal happens 6 weeks earlier or 8 weeks earlier, and it becomes a 3-year deal at $2 million per, right? Or a 2-year deal at 3, 2.5, whatever it is, but clear backup money. Silovs is now completely in the background, but now they put Lankinen in a situation where he is the frontline guy, and now they're looking for the next guy again. So that's opened up a door for Silovs. So is he ready to walk through it yet? Because, if he can, and he should play both back-to-backs. He should play in both back-to-backs. And I think they have another one coming up shortly after that as well. So if he gets those opportunities, he's got a real chance to salvage his career and get it back on the right track within this organization.
Right, but if it goes the other way, they've got Nikita Tolopilo, who's basically sharing starts with Silovs at the American Hockey League level.
Yeah.
I think he wants, obviously, to get a chance, and I think the Canucks probably would like to have a look at him. He was up here for practice this week. I don't know if he's NHL ready, but if Silovs doesn't deliver victory, he's got 1 win in the 6 starts so far this season. If he plays tomorrow night and it doesn't go well, he probably gets the Anaheim game after the Los Angeles game later in the week. But if he isn't capable of delivering victories, I do wonder, like, do they give Tolopilo an opportunity at that point? Is Demco back and ready? Like, again, there's just so much uncertainty outside of Kevin Lankinen. There's nothing but uncertainty around this goaltending position for the Vancouver Canucks. So let's see where this goes.
Well, but so let's say Demco gets healthy, okay?
Yep.
How do you handle the rest of this season? And let's say they make the playoffs. Like, how do you handle this season? Because
if I'm making the call, it's Lankinen. Like, I think Thatcher Demco has to.
That, but understand, when they've overplayed Lankinen this season, that's when we've seen the odd hiccup, right?
Yep.
So you can't put yourself in a position to play Lankinen 3 out of every 4, right? Like, you probably want to get to a point, because there was a while there where they were playing Demco extra because they knew they needed him to get his game back. Now they've made this decision with this contract. So there's probably not as much of a priority to get Demco his game back, as it were, but maybe you split starts when Demco gets there and then figure out who's the hotter goalie in the playoffs, knowing that you've made a longer term decision. Whereas before, everything was going to be set up to eventually put Demco in that position. Right now, it's not necessarily that case. So you're right. There's a lot of questions around it. We'll see how much of a factor Demco is in that decision making and when that happens, because really, when you look at this now, you have to look at the possibility of a Thatcher Demco trade. There are always goaltender needy teams at the deadline, but he's not going to be healthy enough by then, right? Like, if he rejoins the team after the break, that doesn't mean he's going to play the first game coming out of the break. That means he's going to need some time to practice with them. So I don't know that he's even going to play before the deadline, right? So you can't move him at that point. So then you've got to wait until you've got to wait until the end of the season. So there are, there's just so much uncertainty around what they can even do short term right now, because they don't know when they're going to get him.
They have 1 home game after this road trip and before the trade deadline. They play Anaheim on April 5th at home. They play Minnesota
March 5th.
March 7th against Minnesota is after the trade deadline. It's the same night, but it's after the deadline. So there's 4 games here on this road trip. Demco's not an option there. He's going to be reevaluated afterwards. There's 1 game, and I'm with you. Like, it's probably not enough time there with practices and things to get him up to speed. So, this all factors into the decisions that this front office has to make. And we'll see how active they are. The Brock Besser situation obviously is very much at play here as well between now and the 7th of March. It's time for the line of the night, and it's a presentation of Bet365, a proud partner of Rink Wide Vancouver. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. Use code NATION. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. All right, we thought we would sort of do a refresher coming out of the Four Nations break. Outright odds to win the Stanley Cup, and plug your ears, Canuck fans, because the Edmonton Oilers and the Carolina Hurricanes are the Stanley Cup favorites, both at plus 650 as of right now. Now, they both lost today. Not that that's going to affect their odds in the long run, but and so did the Florida Panthers, who have the third best odds. They lost to the Seattle Kraken. And there are the Vancouver Canucks down at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen at plus 4,000. Do you believe in the Vancouver Canucks? Do you want to throw a few bucks on the Vancouver Canucks? You can get them at plus 4,000 to win the Stanley Cup. You buy in?
No, not so they can find a couple of scores. And look,
Yeah.
I know that Jim Rutherford's aggressive. They're not in rebuild mode. So it wouldn't surprise me if they went and made a big push. They've got $12 million to spend. I know that's not $12 million perpetually, but they do have some money right now burning a hole in their pocket. We'll see what happens with Brock Besser. It's going to be strange, because if they're not going to sign him, do they use him as their own rental? Because I don't know that they're going to find a better or more pedigreed scorer at the deadline than Besser. So it's going to be 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, plus you're going to give up assets. So, I don't know. Like if it was me, I would probably, knowing that they're hell-bent on this year, we must get in the playoffs, that's it. It makes the most sense, in my opinion, to keep them as their own rental. Don't you think so?
Well, just an interesting side note here. Abbotsford played tonight down in Tucson. Jonathan Lecker-Mackey didn't play in that hockey
Saw
game.
that.
Neither did Victor Mancini, which I thought was interesting. I mean, they've got a lot of bodies, and they seem to rotate guys in and out, but these are among their best prospects, and if they're healthy. I don't know. I mean, Lecker-Mackey missed a run of games recently, but then was back and was scoring, so I'm not sure the reason he didn't play, but I wanted to make note of that. Canucks with a quick turnaround. They go to Utah tomorrow night, and Utah was in Los Angeles, so both of these teams will be playing back-to-back. The Hockey Club lost 5-3 in L.A. tonight. Barrett Hayton had the first hat trick in Utah Hockey Club history, of course, first year. So the first hat trick of the season for the Utah Hockey Club. 24-24-9 on the season, so 57 points. They stay 6 back of the Vancouver Canucks. This is incredible to me that they move out of Mullet Arena because it wasn't an NHL facility. They moved to the Delta Center that still needs some work, but first year for that hockey club in Utah, they are tied with the San Jose Sharks, the only teams in the NHL with single-digit home ice wins. Utah is 9.
And they're getting great crowds.
I know, but reward the people. 9-12-6. So 9 wins in 27 home games. But they did beat the Vancouver Canucks 3-2 in overtime just before Christmas. Remember, the Canucks were up 2-0 midway through the third, and then Mikhail Sergachev scored what turned out to be the game winner. Clayton Keller's having an incredible season. I think he was a legit candidate for Team USA. 61 points. He had an assist in the hockey game tonight. He and Dylan Guenther both have 20 goals in the season. Guenther missed 10 games before the break, but returned, scored a couple of overtime winners. Logan Cooley didn't play tonight. He's missed 7 straight, but he is expected back soon. I don't know if soon means on Sunday. Sean Dursey returned after missing 52 games, so a little bit of help on the back end there. Connor Ingram was in goal, which means Karl Vejmelka probably gets the start against the Vancouver Canucks. And as we said, the Canucks have 2 left head-to-head against Utah there tomorrow, and then Utah will make its lone visit to Vancouver later on this season. What's interesting to note is both of the games against Utah will be the second of back-to-backs for the Canucks. Now, it's back-to-back for both teams tomorrow coming out of the break, so no real edge there. But the next time they play, Utah's off the night before, and the Canucks have one of those weekends where they play back-to-back on home ice. Doesn't happen too often, but it will then. So we'll see if that factors into it. But, again, there's a little significance to the Vancouver Canucks. If Utah can win in regulation, creep within 4, start to push from behind. Calgary still not out of things in the Western Conference as well. The Flames, they were idle earlier today. All right, good to get you back on Rink Wide. I know that you're going to do a few of these down the stretch here. So, yes, Irf is returning tomorrow, but he's not going to do every game. He's not Kevin Lankinen. He can't play them all. So we need you.
You can call the left-hander anytime.
There you go.
Come out of the bullpen.
Yeah. All right. Well, appreciate you stepping in, and good to get you back into the mix here. Unfortunately, the Vancouver Canucks, they didn't give us a lot to talk about in the way of offense, so we'll see what Sunday brings against the Utah Hockey Club. But that is
I've
going to do
got
it.
5 shows on the schedule, so I want to see what my record is in those 5 games.
All right. Well, you're 0-1 to start here, but we can't pin it all on you. But we look forward to, do you know offhand when your next one is? It next weekend?
Next weekend, yeah. I think the 20th, whatever.
The Seattle game. The game in Seattle on next
Seattle
Saturday.
game.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we look forward to that already, but in the meantime, Irf's going to be back in the saddle here, and we'll do this all again on Sunday after the Canucks take on the Utah Hockey Club. For Mike Rogerson working behind the scenes, and for Farhan, his debut here this season, this is Jeff. Thanks so much for checking out Rink Wide. The final score, one more time, it was the Vegas Golden Knights 3, the Vancouver Canucks 1. We'll talk to you on Sunday after the Canucks and the Utah Hockey Club.